Thank you for asking.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the newest episode of the Theater Enthusiast podcast. I'm actually in a different location today, so sadly, I do not have my hot priest mug or candle, but I do have a photo of the hot priest on my computer to bless the podcast. So he is still here, which is great. Our guest today, I'm very excited about having him because he is a fellow podcast host and an actor. Please welcome Ryan M. Perez. Can you hear it? I have an applause app.
Oh, wow. I can't, but I love that. I need to get that
Yeah,
app.
it hasn't worked the last. I'll just do it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I think like nobody can hear my app anymore via Zoom. It's very upsetting.
Well, it means you have a very powerful microphone, which is great.
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, you usually hear like and then it cuts out.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, but now people maybe I should just stop using it and just applaud for real and like,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
you go.
That could totally work.
Yes.
It's authentic. Gives
Thank
you something to
you.
respond to.
This is so excited that you're here. It's exciting.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for you in this endeavor that you're on.
Thank you. I also just like love your background of actors on your
Oh,
wall.
yeah.
Yeah, most of them smoking cigarettes.
That wasn't
theme?
by design, but it just kind of happened that way. Maybe my subconscious that says I don't even smoke, which is,
Good.
But it does look badass on cinema, and I will die by standing by that.
Listen, ever since the movie Cinderella came out, I've always said I want Kenneth Branagh to direct my life and have Helena Bonham Carter narrate it. And the fact that you have a photo of her behind you is fantastic to me.
Oh, she's the best.
Yeah, she's just name it. She's great in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. True. And one of the greatest people I hear from consistently every guest that I've ever spoken to. She's just the best.
Yeah. So Ryan, let's start from the very beginning. Where are you from?
I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been on the map the last few years for fraught reasons, because there were some Confederate statues, and that is where sadly the White House of the Confederacy still is, but not literally in a divided nation. But we have a street called Monument Avenue, and there was monument. So there's the first monument is of Arthur Ashe, the great tennis player who died of HIV. And after that, it's all Confederate soldiers. So you have this ideologically opposed forces. And, growing up there, anyone that was sane, and you can take this as a political, was like, these statues are dumb. It's time to, put them in a museum. We're not saying burn them, but obviously this seems a little bit dated. These guys were traitors. And that finally came to a head in 2020 during the pandemic, and they are down now.
Yeah. Well, also the statue in front of the Natural History Museum is no longer there with Native Americans and I think Roosevelt on a horse.
Yeah. You're talking about in New York, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Natural History Museum of in New York. Yeah.
Because we had one in Virginia, and there's another statue there too. And I went down there before all the statues got removed. And part of me, have you ever been to Berlin?
No.
So in the Berlin Wall, it's like they turned it into this like graffiti mural. Mm-hmm. It's very like intense but beautiful, and that's what they did with the statues. And I thought it was kind of like, I was like, oh my god, this almost, maybe they should stay, because like these murals and how intense they are at the bottom, it's a very confronting artistic piece. But obviously, capitalism, the street that it's on is a very wealthy street, every home being a minimum of $1 million. And I just don't think the homeowners association was ever going to allow for that. But it was a really interesting moment there. Every day there would be, meditations and just like conversations and yoga. And, I thought they kind of lost an opportunity to maybe elongate that period of past and present colliding.
Yeah. I feel like I'm hearing a play or something about to be written in your mind about what it was like with this.
I wasn't there enough during that, because there were fights. I mean, there was full on, attacks and things like that. I don't want to make myself sound more present there than I was. I came for a week, before everything was going to get demolished, and just spent a lot of time, because growing up there,
Yeah.
we all wanted it down. So it was just, now they're gone, and good riddance. And yeah, hopefully, I think Richmond is ready to move on to the future.
Yeah. Let's not all of America is. Anyway, politics aside.
Yeah.
So what got you interested in performing and film and theater and all of that stuff?
Um, that's a great question. And I hate to like make this such a personal thing, but
Well,
I,
Ryan,
I
I'm interviewing you for this podcast,
yes,
so it is
well,
personal. So it is about you.
of
So
of
please
course.
answer.
I guess what I'm gonna say is kind of a metaphor in the sense that I'm an atheist. I'm not religious, but yeah, most of my family is very religious. And when you speak to someone that can engage in a civil conversation, not so much about who's right or who's wrong, but about their experience with religion and this innate higher calling, I never really understood that. But when I was a kid, there was something about performance in movies and theater that there was just this sensation of me that I was like, oh, this is what I'm made to do. Like this is my calling, and I don't mean that in such a pretentious, like, eyes on me way, and just like, this is what I'm meant to do with my life. Like, and I knew that at 6 or 7 years old, and I was so excited and enthralled by it. And it's very much a blessing for anyone at any age to know what they want to do with their lives, but at such a young age to
Mhm.
have a grasp of what it is. And when you express that to your parents at such a young age, they're like, oh, tomorrow it's going to be drummer, the next day it's going to be astronaut. But consistently year after year, if you keep saying that, they're like, okay, maybe they're into something. And then getting into children's theater, and then just loving cinema and being obsessed about it. And back in the days of before mini DV, when it was still cassette tapes, making your own home movies and editing them on a VHS, you know, I think my parents really were impressed. Like, oh, this is really, he really means this is what he wants to do. But obviously, growing up in Richmond, Virginia, it's not Los Angeles or New York. So there's not a lot of, or earlier we were speaking about London, there's not a lot of theater troops or things like that. So it was really, and my father, I really have to shout him out, did such an outstanding job of finding different things for me to attend, to learn, and to get into it. And it wasn't easy. And and I think so much of this journey is finding your voice. And that's a journey, not a destination. Who knows if you ever get there, but for a long time I think it took me a long time to find my voice.
Mhm. But was there a particular performance or a particular moment where you're like, that was like your aha moment into your, I guess, come to God moment of wanting to be a performer?
um So like I said, I always did do it, but there was the aha moment where my parents were like okay with me going to college and doing it.
Mhm.
I I know it sounds hard to believe. I was 16 because I had just gotten my car, and I auditioned for Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman,
Mhm.
and I got it. Obviously, stretching a bit, bit older of a
It was,
part.
what was it, a high school production?
It was, yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
I I'm sorry again for going intense here, but it
Ryan, don't apologize. Just
yeah, I know,
just
I know.
go for it.
Well, I think once people hear this story, they'll understand why I'm kind of trigger warning it here, if you will.
Mhm.
I was on stage, and back in the day of flip phones, my phone was vibrating, and my drama teacher, who I was quite close to, Lisa Dyer Brake, was like, Ryan, we're in rehearsal, please stop. But then it had gotten to like about the 12th call, and I was like, obviously, someone's really trying to get in touch with me. I need to answer this.
Mhm.
And so I had gotten a call from a friend of mine that was just really random. They had called me 12 times, so I wanted to make sure they were okay. And so I answered the call, and I was in a band at the time called Through the Rear View. And my friend goes, Ryan, are you there? What's going on? Like, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm in rehearsal. And the drummer of my band, his name was Oscar. They're like, Oscar's dead. I was like, what do you mean Oscar's dead? He was like, he was driving to see this band called the Mars Volta in DC, and he crashed and he died. And I was like, what? How do you know? He's like, the police got my number from his body, his cell phone. His parents don't know. And I was like, his parents happen to literally live across the street from my high school. I told the teacher, she's like, go. And I went, and I had to tell his parents that their son was dead, which is a moment, maybe the only moment in my life where, Eternal Sunshine style, I could maybe I would maybe pay to delete that moment in a selfish way, because the pain I had seen people in that moment is something that I would never wish anyone to experience that. And in kind of a very Strasbourg, method sort of way, I think that having happened really, you know, me feeling suicidal and sad brought this Willy Loman that, from my own life experience was very dark and very sad. And I think every parent at a high school wasn't prepared to see that kind of death of a salesman in a high school. And my principal of that school happened to have gone to grad school for theater performance and wrote her thesis on Arthur Miller. And after night one, not only my parents, but she stopped me and she was just like, I've never seen a production of Death of a Salesman that good. I've seen it on Broadway and you were incredible. And I was like, I still was kind of just going through grief, but yeah, that that death and that, you know, peace at the same time, I think it really just kind of it all came together, and it's crazy that it happened. Obviously, I would choose having him alive over, succeeding in a play of a high school production. But yeah, that was really the first moment I think it was like I realized how powerful the medium could be.
Please tell me you did like a lighthearted comedy after that.
I
Because
did not. No, I wish I did. They did a musical after that. I can't sing, but I our band did tribute shows and
yeah,
but yeah, everything I do, I try to do for Oscar, because he didn't make it past 16, so
yeah,
I don't ever forget that.
yeah. I just I say like lighthearted comedy, and I immediately thought of watching the movie Hunger. Did you ever see that movie? It's a Steve McQueen movie with Michael Fassbender. It's about it was during like the troubles in Ireland, and it was about like one of the Irish rebels. I can't remember his name. I think it was like Billy something, and he was in prison and he went on a hunger strike. And it's based on a true story. And that movie like fucked me up. So I ended up having to watch the stupidest movie afterwards to like get out of that funk.
Yeah.
I watched
Wow.
Revenge of the Bridesmaids, which was like an ABC family movie because I was like,
Amazing.
I need something so stupid and like so mindless after watching like such an intense thing
It
that,
makes total sense. You know what? I Now that I kind of go back, I think I watch a lot of Smallville. So
yeah,
Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum, thank you.
yeah.
Smallville got me through it.
Doesn't he end up flying in like the very last episode?
I think that is the
He
final
becomes
shot.
like
Yeah.
Superman. It's like him above Earth.
It was a bit frustrating because they like went on for 10 seasons and everyone's like, come on,
Yeah,
when's he gonna get to the flying?
yeah.
But funny enough, those showrunners, Miles Blar, they're the ones who did Wednesday. So,
Hmm.
they're still crushing
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah, there are people out there. I just remember like I had a big crush on somebody in high school who liked Smallville, so I watched some episodes to be like, this guy likes Smallville, so I'm gonna watch some episodes. And then, Allison Mack and the Sex Cult. So there we go.
Oh, yeah, God. Yeah, what a crazy story for her. She was so talented too. I hope, I know she's in prison for a while, but I hope, deprogramming works for her,
Yeah. I don't know. I was kind of like, give me a mini series about a sex cult and I'm good. Like, you know how people like their
I'm surprised they haven't done that yet.
they
You
haven't
know,
done what? Like like
the Nevixium, series yet,
no, they have. They had like
Oh,
an
I didn't know. Okay.
yeah, I think it was HBO had a Nexium series, like a docu-series about it. And then one of the girls had their own show on Stars.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I was like deep into it. I was like, this is the most fucked up thing.
Yeah.
And I want to watch it, and I'm obsessed with knowing every single detail about what happened. And there are people who still follow this guy.
Really? I thought he was
Yeah.
arrested finally. Is
No,
he
he
not?
was. So like the series had ended up having like two seasons.
Yeah.
The second season was kind of about the trial, and he still had some followers who like believed in him. And I think there's like four or five of them who are like really trying to like disprove all the information, and that like Keith Raniere is actually a good guy. And they're like outside the prison, like chanting for him and like flashing flashlights towards his window.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a
Just
crazy
like,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was
Oof.
just watching that other one that came out on Hulu, like Stolen Youth, about this guy and like these Sarah Lawrence college students.
I
And
just heard about that one. I had not heard of it, but it popped up somehow in an algorithm, and I'm gonna have to check that one out.
yeah, my algorithm on Instagram is like join a dating app. So
Nice. And
yeah,
I, that's amazing.
and even somebody said to me last night, you should date. I'm like, well, if you know any good looking single straight guys, let me know. Anyway,
Yeah.
enough about my non existent love life. So, where did you end up going to college? And what made you decide to go there?
So bizarrely enough,
Mhm.
and people will probably not believe this. I had never really I heard of NYU, but I didn't hear of Tisch.
Mhm.
I had spent every summer in high school living in LA in the summer and attending UCLA summer programs. So I had like almost a year's worth of credits at UCLA.
Mhm.
And that was my dream school. And then I had started to kind of like during sophomore year get into USC, the idea of that being a school as well. So for me, it was only two schools. It was UCLA or USC. And then the fall of my senior year in high school, someone had reached out to me. Had you ever considered applying to Tisch? And I was like, Tisch? What's Tisch? And then they're like, NYU. I was like, I've heard of NYU, but what's this Tisch thing? And so
Mhm.
then I looked into it and I was like, I didn't have like a safety school or so to speak, not by any means saying NYU is a safety school. It's
Yeah,
not. But I was like, yeah, let me apply. So I got and I applied to all three and I got into all three.
that's great.
And I remember coming to New York City and I remember I spoke to Rufus Sewell about this when he did the podcast. I saw his play Rock and Roll. I
Oh
saw
my God, me too. I also saw it because Alice Eve was in the show, and I really love her.
oh
And
yeah, she's great.
yeah, so I
Brian
actually like,
Cox.
yeah, I like stage doored after the show, and I was like, I think you're great. And like Rufus Sewell was right there because they were dating at the time. And I said to him, like, oh, you were great too. So
Yeah, great
yeah, I
show.
love Alice Eve. Well, it's Tom Stoppard. I didn't understand what was happening most of the time.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I know what's going on in Arcadia, because when I first saw the show, I was like, I don't understand any of this. Cut to me doing like 5 performances a week of merchandise there. I like
Have
know
you
the
seen
show better.
Leopoldstadt yet?
I have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
I hear it's amazing. I also have like no money for shows, but next thing I have coming up is I'm seeing Parade, and then I'm seeing Sweeney Todd. And then I have tickets to the Thanksgiving show and Camelot. So that's what I have coming up.
Wow. Yeah. Definitely
And
see
John Mayer in concert. But
Leopoldstadt's on Today Ticks now. You can get reasonable
yeah.
price because but
Well, let's talk about reasonable price, because back in the day, like I'm a member of TDF, and like there are tickets for $57, like, which is insane to me. Even like Broadway show lottery, it's so much more expensive now than it was like 10 years ago in my youth.
yeah. Well,
It's
what happened is
yeah.
they all have these COVID protocols, so
Mhm.
the margins for them to be in the green have gone up so much.
Yeah.
You know,
I read a headline somewhere saying that theaters aren't really like saying how much money they're actually not
well
making.
part of the COVID rule is that they don't have to disclose it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's true.
Yeah. I remember I was talking to an actor recently on the podcast, and I asked them about these cardboard cutouts that they had of the whole cast. And they were saying, like, yeah, we were selling not as much as they would like. So we did an influencer event, and that's where the cardboard cutouts came from.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, but for $40 on Today Tick. So see
Okay.
Leopoldstadt.
Yeah. I'm gonna try. I hear it's amazing. And I am Jewish, so like shows like that I know would affect me. Like, did you see Indecent?
I did not know.
Oh my God. That was a brilliant show. I was really happy that the director won for direction of a play because she wasn't like even a prediction that she was going to win, and she did, and it was so well deserved because that show was so beautiful. And the guy who played the narrator for the show, I was shocked he wasn't even nominated for anything. But I
Wow.
also have a special place in my heart for Paula Vogel because of How I Learned to Drive. Because when I was in college, I directed that show. So
Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, so I saw that show
yeah. Tom
and
Stopper, Rufus Sewell.
yeah,
Back to that.
yeah. And then I had signed to UCLA, but then there was kind of a moment, I think like they give you till May 1st is the deadline.
Mhm.
And then, the night before, I just kind of classically was like, maybe I'm playing it too safe. I've spent so much time in LA. I don't know New York. I really want to be a theater actor. LA is such a, at that time, it was still the binary of theater versus film. And I was like, let me risk it all. And I decided to go to NYU.
Yeah. Do you remember what the audition process was like for NYU?
Everything was classic, contemporary, one and one, and then a back pocket piece.
Yeah. Do you remember what you auditioned with?
I did The Boys Next Door. I think I did Euripides, and then I don't know what my back pocket piece was though.
It's okay. I'm sure
Yeah,
it wasn't long
yeah,
ago, but it was long ago.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's my birthday tomorrow, so that would be
Happy birthday.
that'd be
You
15
don't
years
have,
ago.
I was going to say, you don't have to age yourself.
That's all good. I'm turning 33.
Oh, sorry. I threw up because I'm older. Not by a month. Anyway, so what was it like at NYU? What was the whole experience like for you?
Um, I hated it. It was awful. In fact, it was miserable. The first friend I made, funny enough, was a actress named Rachel Brosnahan, and we had to take a singing class together, and we just kind of were not in the good singing group to say the least, and we became buddies because of it, and still great friends. But I just thought the training was really inconsistent. Everyone there kind of uh contradicted one another at Strasbourg. NYU had a really tense relationship with the studio, and it was really hard to meet people because you spent so much time in your conservatory that you just didn't hang out with the people in your gen eds class. And so after 2 years of finishing my primary studio, I dropped out and became a roadie for rock bands. And I did that for 3 years. And then at that point, I had been dropped out for so long, I had to reapply to NYU, and I got back in and finished. And then I graduated in 2014.
What was your experience like working as a roadie? And did you
Uh,
watch that Cameron Crowe show, Roadies?
yes, actually, I did because I know Carla Gugino, and and
Of Carla Gugino?
yeah, she's the sweetest human ever.
Yeah.
And
One of the OG Troop Beverly Hills girls.
well,
Lied about her age to be in that movie.
I did
Sorry.
not know that, but
Okay.
I think all us roadies were tremendously shocked at someone who got it so right and Almost Famous could get it so wrong in roadies. And yeah, that show, Cameron, I love you, buddy, but yeah, that show was awful. So bad.
Well, I loved it, but I also was
Yeah.
a roadie. So I just said
No,
to
it's
myself,
nothing
like,
like that.
oh, finally like a good Cameron Crowe
It
thing.
it, it
I
made,
didn't like some.
roadie lifestyle look like a network broad comedy. It was just like that's not how it is.
Well, it's television, but I mean, what out there is really authentic to what something really is nowadays? I mean, I'm sure there's stuff out there, but I feel like if you want to go mainstream, it's so different.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of conflicting thoughts on the show and its relevancy to today's term, but I thought Entourage did a really, I mean, I know it was escapism, but at that time, it really did
Yes.
capture what it was like in Hollywood, for
Yeah.
better and for worse.
Carla Gugino was in that too.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Just bringing it back to Carla Gugino.
Yeah,
We do
she's the
like the whole
best.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she's great. I saw Desire Under the Elms twice, and she was in that. And yeah,
Yeah, she's the best.
yeah.
Uh,
We tried to get her for a virtual reading I was directing, but unfortunately she couldn't do it. But we did try.
She's got a production company, and
Yeah.
she's crushing it right now, and I think, she's got so many amazing things. She's
Yeah.
I miss her energy. She's just what if you can imagine how you think she is, it's a million times better, and
Yeah.
she's just she's so talented. It's
Yeah.
great to see great people like her succeed in this business.
I agree. I mean, I don't know many, but the ones that I do know, I have a friend who like made their Broadway debut and Almost Famous. And if anybody deserved to have something good happen to them in that way, it was this person.
I'm
So
happy for them. That's amazing.
yeah.
Very kind of you to say.
No, it's true. I mean, listen, if those who have listened to the podcast know I had like a very rough senior year of college and all that stuff. And I like to think I'm a nice person. And, if somebody's nice and they're talented and they deserve it, you always want good things to happen for that person.
Yeah,
And and they work their ass off and you just want good things to happen for them because
totally.
they deserve it. And anyway, I'm just going to keep repeating myself. So when you graduated, so you got back to NYU, did you have the same experience? I mean, you have,
No. So my first
yeah,
2 years were really dark because, as I mentioned before, my best friend had died.
yeah,
Then my other best friend, who had just beaten cancer, died 2 weeks into NYU. So it was just those were like, Greek Shakespearean dark 2 years. I came back, and let's just say, on being on tour, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing, they're all pretty true cliches, and I developed some really bad habits, and I never had fun at NYU. So I came back, but I got, you know, trapped in the party cycle, and I didn't seize the day like I really, really wished I did. I mean, maybe, there was part of me that needed it because I never had that my
mhm,
freshman or sophomore years. But let's just say, when I came back, I more than made up for lost time. But I
yeah,
didn't focus in the way that I wished I would have.
yeah. So when you graduated NYU, what happened next? Did you do a showcase? Did you get any representation from a showcase? What happened?
So when I had graduated, I was in the darkest place of my life then. I was living with someone like a long time ago, someone I dated. We were together for 3 years. It ended horribly. I at this point the I am comfortable saying that the cycles had turned into full blown addiction. I was coming to class drunk and was doing a lot of cocaine, and I was just in a really bad place. And when I graduated, my dad was really concerned, and a friend of mine had booked a movie in Africa, and I was just so tired of New York, and I was in such a bad cycle. My best friend Denzel Whitaker booked a movie in Cape Town, and he invited me to go with him, and I did. And then after, we were in Cape Town for a month doing that, entourage style, went to Europe, and then I stayed in Europe for 3 months. And so honestly, I didn't get sober until December 3rd, 2016. So really, I kind of look, even though in March of 2015 I started to get into acting, I didn't really get focused till, like, I kind of count the beginning of my serious acting time, January 2017, because I'd only gotten sober a few days before New Year's. And yeah, so it's been 6 years of lucid pursuing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, during that time in your life compared to now, can you definitely, I mean, obviously you see a difference with your performance, but was there anything in college where people were saying something to you in regards to this?
Well, I think there was, because Alec Baldwin taught a master class where he chose 14 people, and I was one of the ones that got in.
Mhm.
And everyone was like, "Ryan, you're talented. Like, yo, like, that's cool. You like to have fun, but pick your battles. So, like,
Mhm.
focus." And I thought I was so cool because I had never had that experience before, having fun in college, and all of a sudden, like, enjoying everyone I was at the studio called Stone Street and having a blast. And, I was like, yeah, this is the time we go to the bar. And I, to be be really honest with you, I wasn't really showing up to the showcases at Stone Street, and I just kind of was literally drunk, most of the time, and on substances and on life, and yeah, I that cost me a lot, obviously, because I there were opportunities that came my way and I wasn't ready for them. And I really, to this day, have a hard time beating myself up for that. But I guess what happened needed to happen because it got me to where I am now. And I think, it's just always, you can't change the clock, but you always wish you could do things differently. The classic, if I'd known what I know now, then, I would have done it this way and that way. But I think as tough as things got and as dark as they got, everything that happened needed to happen because I wouldn't be the actor,
Mhm.
moreover, the human I am today without all those things happening.
Yeah. How, trying to like phrase this question, and how do you think all of that has made you into the actor that you are? Like, how do you perceive yourself like with your acting? Does that make sense?
Well, I think one of the things that, I at one point that I never hear, a conservatory teacher speak about is like, for me, knowing a lot of actors and seeing a lot of auditions and, watching a lot of people become really famous and a lot of people not, like, one of the things that I think makes consistently for the great actors are people that live full rounded lives. And I mean that in like outside of the business,
Yeah.
it's not the end all be all of their lives. They live interesting and unique lives that aren't just, based upon who's my agent, what auditions am I getting? Like they have life experience. You can
Yeah.
look them in the eyes and you can be like, oh wow, this person's really lived,
Yeah.
and that's not saying, go be like me, be drunk and travel the world and make a fool out of yourself, but you need to have other things
Mhm.
to give you experience because that's what makes for interesting characters. If
Yeah.
if this acting thing and being in classes and that's the basic main staple of your diet, I promise there's not going to be a lot of depth to you, and casting directors will see that,
Yeah.
and you need to have depth, and I think you take jobs that you wouldn't normally take, do things that you wouldn't normally do because
Mhm.
those are what'll provide you with the experience that you'll pull from, like that's the stuff I learned the most from being a roadie and talking to people all around the world. Obviously that was a very luxurious opportunity. I'm self-aware of that, but like, I took janitor jobs, like after graduating college, and that was not an easy thing of mine to, oh my God, I spent all this money in tuition. Why am I literally cleaning shit? But, working with those guys and all my Hispanic brethren, I say that as a fellow Hispanic man, you know, that gave me so much life experience, talking, people that are dying to come to this country to work a job like that with a smile on their face. It really teaches you about privilege and, just about a work ethic. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss out on. Obviously, I'm not saying everyone needs to be a janitor, but, you know, surround yourself with people that aren't just in the business. You need that.
Yeah. So you started, you say January 1st, 2017.
Well, that's kind of when I say I stood, I at that point I was almost a month sober, and that's kind of like when I
I was
really,
like your rebirth into acting, I guess you
mm,
could say, right?
yeah, when I was showing up for auditions without a cocktail in me. Yes, that would be
Perfect.
then. Yeah,
So how did you go about getting auditions and all that stuff?
it was impossible. I mean, it was literally, people asking me for advice now, for it was years of going to one-on-one and going to casting director workshops and doing, the agent and manager panels and sometimes, getting great feedback and walking out of there on cloud nine thinking, I'm signed, and following up the next day and just not even getting a response.
Mhm.
And it was years of doing that. It was years of just going and doing these casting director workshops and crushing that scene for X who's casting Y show that I'm perfect fit for, and never getting called in, and being really sad and frustrated with just how impossible it was, and then finally just kind of not being above anything, and going on backstage and going to NYU, and anytime someone gave me an opportunity to act, and even in the most luxurious setting, like,
Yeah.
hey, we're doing a class, I'm directing the actor and we need actors,
Mhm.
no money, but you just got years of doing that, and then different people saying, will you do my film? I have no money, but doing that, and
Yeah.
like, that was, I did that. I called it the years of yes, where like anytime someone had an acting chance for me, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter,
Well,
and
did you also think of it as a way of like, even though I'm not getting paid, I still get to do what I love to do?
I wish I did have that thought.
Mhm.
Maybe
Like,
I
do
did
you
to it.
feel that way now that you look back on it?
Well, 100%. I mean, I see that now as like, that is the work of being an actor. I think people think like,
Yeah.
oh, you get an audition for Wednesday and then you do the job and that's acting work. No, 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 no. The hustling, the grinding, the showcases,
Yeah.
I mean, that is the hardest working you ever be as an actor. That is the work of being an actor. Everything
I
else is a
Sorry, I don't mean to
vacation.
interrupt. Yeah. Well, no,
That,
I agree with you because, I haven't performed since college. And looking back on it now, I think I'd be a much better director anyway. Um, but with my experience, and I have a very big entertainment knowledge base, and I watch a lot of like interviews with people, and not really listen to podcasts, but also in my experience of interviewing people, like, and one of the main things about this podcast is whoever is listening to get different perspectives of the industry, whether it be TV, film, mostly theater, because hence Theater Enthusiast podcast, is just to get different people's perspective of what it is. And people need to understand that, like, just because, like, I'm an actor, I want to perform, there's so much work that goes into it. And it's a business and it's a grind. And, you can go on 100 auditions and just book one thing.
yeah,
And that's something like people, even in college, like, when you're in college, you think like, oh, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to be like winning a Tony. That might not necessarily, I mean, it could be the case, but it's not necessarily the case. Like, there's a lot of wonderful performers and actors out there who are just happy to be making a living and get the
totally.
opportunity to just like perform and do something. I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh, yeah, I have to like do this thing, I have to like pretend I'm this. I was like, but you know what? That's an opportunity for you to act
Yeah,
and do something. Like, even though you're kind of looking down on it, guess what? You're acting,
yeah.
and that's what people like, hopefully, who are listening understand that.
No, and that's exactly it, because that is what you need to be doing, and you need to realize and let up on yourself that, like, I understand that people think they need a credit to say they're an actor, but you're an actor the minute that you're out there grinding, you're
Mhm.
trying to do the thing. That is acting. Like, that is the grind. That is it.
Yeah.
Obviously, what's the saying? New level, new devil. You know what I mean? Anytime you go up, there's a new thing. And I promise you, if you think, going and being around celebrities and on a set and hanging out with this person is going to be the thing that fills you up, when you get there, you're going to be like, I don't feel how I thought I would feel. All these things that I thought would fill me up don't. So you really need to be a full-rounded person.
Mhm.
To the happiness has to come from other things, because
Yeah.
if it's only from how I'm doing in my acting career or whatever creative pursuit you're in, you're not going to make it, because it is a great producer friend of mine, Andy Horowitz, who works with all A-list. He produced Suicide Squad, American Hustle, put this the best way for me. Acting's lives, even for A-listers, it's mostly low lows followed by occasional really high highs. And
Mhm.
those high highs, they're fleeting. That movie's going to end production. That show's going to end.
Yeah.
You really got to learn to just be okay and take care of your mental health, because being in those lows so often, it can drive you crazy.
There's an analogy I love that I think you're gonna love too. I sometimes, I'm sure like you do, end up going on like a YouTube, like not YouTube spiral,
Always.
but like a
Yeah.
cycle of YouTubeness. Um, and there was this interview with Neil Patrick Harris, and he was saying, I think he like just got Doogie Howser or something, and he said somebody took me out, and they were talking about how like your acting career is going to be like surfing.
Yeah.
You know, you're sitting,
Catching waves.
yeah, trying to
Yeah.
catch waves. Sometimes you catch them and then you have to like, and then the wave is done, and then you're sitting waiting again, paddling. Sometimes
Yeah.
you get the wave, sometimes you don't. So clearly you've heard of that analogy.
Yeah.
There we are.
There was a guest I told you to write down before we started recording this episode.
Yeah.
His name is David Costable. And he said it on my, and this isn't a plug for my podcast, but listen to his episode.
We're
It's a
going to
plug.
talk about it. Don't
No,
worry.
no,
Your
it's
podcast plug will happen.
no. It's a plug for David Costable,
Mhm.
where he said, and this is a tough thing to hear, in this business, there is no staircase. There's no elevator. It doesn't exist. There's no climb. That's all. It's all bullshit. Like if going off the Neil Patrick Harris thing, it is catching waves.
Yeah.
You sit out there, you're paddling, you hope you catch one. If you do, it could bring you 3 inches or could bring you all the way to the shore. You don't know. But you can't look at the other surfers. You can't compare. You just got to be focused, because if you do, if like literally you're in the ocean and you're not going to be catching any waves.
Yeah.
Part of catching a wave mandates swimming, so that by the time that the wave catches the action and you
Right.
ride it. And so, it's really important that, that don't worry about climbing this mountain and all of that. You got to worry about your mental health and being proud of yourself in the work that you're doing. And know that you're doing great work. To anyone listening right now, if you're showing up to auditions, and even though you're not getting it, like, you're doing it. That's acting, man. That's the work. Be proud of that. That's so cool. Like that is the work right there. You are an actor.
Yeah, I also agree with you about that. Don't compare yourself, because even before when we started, when I was saying how I was like, in my research with like listening to your podcast, I was like, oh, maybe I should do my podcast this way. And then I had to stop myself and be like, I am my own person.
Yeah.
I have my own interview style. And there we are. Because like if you end up comparing yourself to other people, then you just get into like a spiral of like, am I not good enough? And I know I'm fabulous, so I don't have to do that at all. So there we go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I started getting sober in the rooms, one of the things that they said to me, when you start obsessing about comparing, or I should have done this, or I should be doing that, is to start going like this on your shoulder. And I'm not doing a Matthew McConaughey here, but it's like,
For those listening, he's tapping himself on the shoulder. Don't worry.
and it's tapping yourself on your shoulder to say and remind yourself, I'm here right now in this moment. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not them. And to remind yourself that this moment is your moment, and that is what you choose to do. Don't worry about anyone else or any other thing. All that matters is what you do with the time that you have given to you.
Yeah. So since auditioning and anything like that, you have done some TV and film credits, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
SVU, you're going to be on FBI on your birthday.
I did this really big HBO show that was a dream, which hopefully one day, we'll get a chance to talk about when that comes out. And then I did a movie with Gina Gershon, who I love, who's also another great speaking
too.
of Carla, the Ginas of the
Gina
Hollywood.
Gershon. Yeah, she was on Broadway in Bye Bye Birdie, which I did not see, but she was in it.
Yeah, I love Gina. So it's been a really interesting 12 months, because it for so long, because the world shut down.
Yeah.
And I started my podcast in 2019. It was so many years of talking about acting. And even though I was auditioning to like finally then being on sets and getting to act, I really do count my lucky stars, because it took so long to get there. And it took overcoming addictions, and that's an ongoing battle. It's not done, but you know, I'm of course not where I want to be, yet, but I'm
Yeah.
trying my best to get there. And
Well, again, listen, I think Andre DeShields in his Tony speech said the top of one mountain is the bottom of another.
yeah,
So, and
totally,
also, again, there's no stairs. Everything is a wave, and you're working and you're doing your thing. Like, I always said to myself, like, when you're younger, like, I want to be like this well-known performer and like have all,
totally.
but like for me now, I always say, like, if I were ever to like go back into that field, I would just be happy to be a working actor.
You know Steve Vincent?
The name sounds very familiar.
So him and Sig De Miguel, they're two of my favorite casting directors. And Steve
Mhm.
Vincent has this wonderful anecdote, and I hope you don't mind if I share it. I'll make it brief. But
No, please. That's what this podcast is.
and
Please
he
share.
teaches a class at one-on-one, and you should take it, but look at it as an acting class because he's a great teacher. So is Sig. They're the best. And Steve said, if your goal is to be on a yacht with Leo hanging out, like go be in venture capital. It's more likely to happen there.
Yeah.
But if you want to be an actor and you want to go through this and you want to find value in the work that you do, it's never going to be that. But if you stay in this business long enough and you're true to yourself and you're true to, the craft and being open and helping others, what's going to happen is one day, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to get a phone call and you're going to get this part in this movie that you never thought would come your way, and they're going to fly you business class, and you're going to have a day off, and you're going to be in Marina Del Rey, and someone's going to invite you on a boat, and Sebastian Stan's going to be there. And then you're just going to laugh to yourself because, like, that's how this business works.
Yeah.
Let it surprise you.
Yeah.
Because it will.
Yeah. Just how is it for you being on sets? Is it exciting? Do you also believe in the theory that having theater training helps working on film and TV sets?
Um, I'll tell you, it's interesting depending upon, obviously I've been on a lot of procedural sets, and then I've been on like, very expensive drama sets, and I've been on independent film.
Mhm.
And the HBO piece I did is a very theater driven. So that was the first time I felt like the training really helped me because,
Yeah.
one of the scenes that we shot for 17 hours,
Wow.
and it's a very intense scene. And so then, even speaking to one of the actors, I want to say his name, but I don't think I can because it would give it away. But he did do the podcast.
His name is Bob.
Yeah. And all the training then was used. But
Mhm.
I think on the more procedural stuff,
Mhm.
especially like doing co-star work,
Yeah.
you're not there to make a meal out of it. You're there to say
Mhm.
co-stars give exposition, they
Mhm.
move the story along, they get
Yeah.
in, they get out. And know that, don't try to make a meal out of it because like I think co-star auditions are the hardest auditions there are. You know what I mean? Like you got, excuse me, ma'am, do you know where the dry clean, like saying that is like, boy, there's a million different ways you could say it. Like, what do they mean? What's like, don't overthink it.
Mhm.
Those are the hardest auditions. Those auditions are traps. And so I think any theater actor can really start to overthink the simple things in the co-star stuff. When you get to the meteor stuff, then you can use your training. But
I would
don't
say
over
I meant it more in like you're waiting around. 'Cause
oh,
yeah,
um,
well, because Emma Thompson, she said, I again with like, the clips and things that appear on your Instagram, she was saying that theater training is so helpful because, when you're just like waiting around to go on to something, with your theater training, you know how to wait before
yeah.
you get into the character.
I think, if I'm being really, really honest about like waiting around on set, it's the most luxurious. Like you're in a trailer, you got an iPhone, you know what I mean? Like you're getting paid very handsomely. There's crafty, you got a meal,
Yeah.
that's by far from the hardest thing you're gonna. I mean, in fact, those moments, what I encourage all of you to do in those moments that you find yourself in a trailer on a set is to close your eyes and meditate and think back to all the different yous out there that dreamed of that moment, because this is what I do when I'm on sets.
Yeah.
How hard you fought, all the things that awful and good that have happened in your life, and that you're finally there. And more importantly, what I ask each and every one of you is to pay it forward. And I'm not saying like, when you're on set, plug your actor friend. Obviously, don't do that. But I'm saying this business only exists if we help each other.
Yeah.
Like there are certain movie stars that just kind of bring this, like they're, this all encompassing God, and know what, like,
Mhm.
that is not a way to do it. This business, I promise you, if you're a good person and you are good to others, that will serve you more well than
Mhm.
if you're the most, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis level talented, but you're weird. Like, being a
Yeah.
good person is what those people want on sets.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think don't be an asshole.
Yeah. And
Well,
you'd be
yeah.
surprised how hard that no can be for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I also think like okay. There's this theater actor who I used to be a very big fan of, and they were going into a show, and I met them at an after party of said show, and I went up to them. Sorry, the toilet
I
was making
I
noise.
can't hear it even, so don't even.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The refrigerator behind me was making noise, not the toilet. Welcome to where I am. And I went up to them because they were in one of my favorite shows of all time. And I said, this show is my favorite, blah, blah, like something you don't get over. And they were just so nasty to me in regards to that. I was like, sir, you're in this show. Calm down. And even like when we were doing these what are they called? These readings virtually during the pandemic, I always said, like, I don't want to work with this person because they were a complete asshole to me. Even if they could say no if we send out the offer, but I don't even want to like send them an offer for this part because they were such a douche nozzle.
Never work with them again. And I want to hear who it was as soon as
Oh,
this is
just
over.
remind me after, I'll tell you. I did
Yeah.
mention this on another podcast, and the actor was like, you need to tell me who it is. And then I told them they were like, oh no, that person's a douche. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
believe me, that person, it's going to come bite them in the ass, because like, especially now in the world we live in, there's just not time for that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, some of the best actors I know, like Cillian Murphy, and they're total gentlemen. They do their thing. Like,
Is that why he's like literally behind you smoking a cig?
well, I love Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
That's
That is on my Netflix
yeah.
too. I feel like it's a show so up my alley, but I just haven't like sat down to watch it yet. And I've heard like such great things about it. So
It's
it's on my Netflix queue. It'll happen
it's
one day.
the first two seasons of that show are some of the finest writing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Everything else after that, don't get me wrong, it's great, but those first two seasons really savor
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to Daisy Jones and the Six.
Yeah, I remember when they were making that, and
I just finished the book the other day, and I just anxiously, if you want to talk about like rock and roll in the 70s and
well, speaking back up to
that
Cameron
happened.
Crowe, I'm and how Roadies didn't get it right. I'm really excited to see this one because everything I hear, this one gets it right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also different than Roadies because it's more about this rock band in the 70s.
Right, but I mean that was almost famous, and Cameron Crowe did that, and
Yeah, it's
and
true.
and
That's
so
one of my favorite movies. So if you didn't like it, then we can't
no,
talk
I
any
love
further.
almost. That's what
Okay.
I meant. Almost
Yeah.
Famous is a perfect movie. He
Yeah.
got road life right on that.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
Still to this day, that is it. I mean, maybe not as much, blatant drug use and misogyny, but
Yeah. Did you see the musical?
I didn't. I don't want to lie. I
You
know you
don't
and I.
have to lie.
No, I don't want to lie in the sense that, like, I know you and I spoke at the beginning that I love Spring Awakening, but I'm not a musical guy. That was the only musical in my life that came and grabbed me in a divine way, and I connected with that in a way I've just never connected with the musical since.
Listen, I used to do, I was about to say merch at shows. I used to work as a concierge in hotels before the pandemic. And I was like their go-to theater ticket seller.
Oh
And I would
wow,
have people come up to me and they're like, yeah, I'm not a big musical person. I'm like, that's fine because there's something for everybody. Go see Jersey
totally
Boys. Because Jersey Boys is not like your typical musical where they're going to be like, I have a feeling, so I'm going to sing.
right. And that's exactly
Yeah.
what I'd make fun of in musicals. So thank you for understanding,
Yeah, listen,
Yeah.
I also like don't judge anybody about their musical theater taste anymore. In college people judge everybody, but
Oh God.
yeah,
Yeah.
like when I was there were shows that I'm not fans of that people love, and there are shows that I love that people don't like, and they're like, "Well, I didn't like that." I'm like, "Okay, you didn't like it." And then
Yeah.
I tell people there's something I didn't like, they get so offended. It was like, calm down. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just crazy.
Ugh.
So, how did the wanting to do your podcast come about? And your name of the podcast is?
An actor despairs.
There you go. I was pointing to him so he can say the name of his
Um,
podcast. I knew the name of it, but I thought it would be great if you said it.
Here's a great story for you, for all you people out there that think you have ideas in your head, but that they'll never work. I had that idea for that podcast since I was 21, and I did not start it till I was 29.
Mhm.
And I always knew so clearly what it was. I just didn't think anyone would care. The idea of starting something and just not knowing and sucking at, like, I just was like, there's too many. I was making every excuse in the world. But, I am an actor. I love actors. Like you said
Mhm.
earlier, a lot of us, this is just the goals to like work and do good work and make a living and fuck all this celebrity bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, it's about the work. And for me, there was always so many actors, like Killian being one of them, that do incredible work, but I don't think really ever get the praise or people, and I know Killian doesn't really like doing talk shows, and that's okay. But like, there are a lot of people that just don't get the chance to do the Fallon or things like that, and people aren't as interested. And I hate, I have a weird, the character actor thing. I find that to be a weird. It can be belittling at times when people say that, oh, you're a character actor. What is that? Everyone's playing a character, but the
Listen,
reason
I was typecast. I always go back to college because I didn't pursue it after, because I just, as soon as I graduated, I just started working to make money. But I was typecast in college, especially by this one professor. And there's a quote. Remember when like Facebook, you can put quotes up?
oh yeah,
Yeah, there's a quote I have up there from Laura Linney where it was, no actor is ever one thing because no person is ever one thing. I think like I'm paraphrasing the quote, but that's what that is.
yeah, I love Laura Linney. She's about to do a play.
I'm aware. I call her Queen Linny. Both times I met her at a stage door, I cried. First time I met her, I started crying and she touched my elbows.
Yeah,
And the second time I met her, she did My Name is Lucy Barton. And it was literally just me and an autograph seeker at the stage door. And she was so lovely. And I was crying a little bit and I got a photo with her. And I have a droopy eyelid. So when I'm just very tired or I guess emotional, my eyelid just looks super great. So there's
yeah,
a photo of me where I look like my eye is half closed. But
wow,
she's just like, and I will be seeing that show. I saw her in Little Foxes twice because I saw her and Cynthia Nixon play the two roles.
yeah,
And even my friend was like, how did she not win the Tony for the show? I was like,
yeah,
no, she's just like, and I worked with somebody on a reading and they're like, oh, I'm good friends with her. I was like, stop it. And during the pandemic, she did this thing where if you donate, she'll send you a postcard
wow.
that she has. And I did that and I got a postcard. I mean, who knows if it's really her, but I have a Laura Linney postcard from Budapest sitting in my apartment.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm convelling. I love her. I think my love for her started when I saw her on Inside the Actors Studio. I was there for that taping for her.
Oh
And
wow, that's so cool. She's the best.
I've been
Love her work.
asked, I was like, asked, maybe I've been to their actors studio. I've been to a lot of them. So
Amazing. That's so cool.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so
Getting back
basically
to that. Yeah.
it was just like, so I started doing it and I started with friends,
Mhm.
then friends of friends, and then I started, maybe emailing some people, and it just kind of really snowballed into this crazy thing. And
Yeah.
now here I am 220 episodes later.
Yeah. What would you say your mission statement is of your podcast, and what do you hope people get out of it?
I have one written out, but I would say it's really to have a conversation and celebrate people's individual journey and hear how they did it. And more importantly, like, what lessons that they've learned in their career that could or could not be applicable to others, and it's really just about hearing, it's as much biographical as it is, an acting lesson. There are a lot more people that do process
Mhm.
ones. Mine is more just like, tell me about the experience about each thing, and how that happened. And so it's really just hearing about what worked for them, and maybe it'll work for you.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to name names, but do you have like, so Seth Meyers loves Rihanna. I'm a huge Seth
Yeah.
Meyers fan. And he's always said like his dream guest is like Rihanna, but now he did day drinking with her. But like
Yeah.
before that, who would be like your Rihanna?
Well, it's funny. When I started the podcast, before I started it, when I was like 21, I
Mhm.
came up with a list of like 100 actors that I thought were some
Yeah.
of the best working actors in Hollywood.
Mhm.
I've gotten like 70 of them. So I want to say I feel really spoiled. Obviously, I could always go. There's more, Killian being one of them, but I've been very fortunate that a lot of people on that list I've been able to talk to. So I can say that I feel spoiled in the sense that I've gotten to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
A lot of people on the show, I don't want to say who they are because I don't want it to people.
No, of course. I'm not, again,
Yeah, to think
I already
I
said not to
value
name
that.
names,
Yeah, yeah,
not to
yeah.
name names. Yeah. But from podcast host to podcast host, do you ever get nervous before you do a podcast? And do you always just say to yourself, like, I don't remember how to interview people. Like, I don't remember what I'm doing.
At first, in like when it um there was a period like when there was a moment where I would email someone that was on my favorite television show, and then Monday I would have them in person right before the pandemic. And that was just like, and I would go meet them at the elevator. And that was like, it was just kind of wild to go like from this person. Friday night's episode of whatever show was amazing, and then Monday I had them in person. And I always called that elevator moment, where it would just
Yeah.
be like I had to meet them and bring them in, and that was magical. I missed the in-person thing, because like auditioning now, everything's just kind of moved online. But no, I don't anymore. I don't get nervous. I don't mean that in a cocky way. I just like, I love talking to people, whether
Yeah.
actors or not, and I think as humans, we like to have conversations with humans. That's what,
Yeah.
I think if anything, the pandemic taught us is how much we need each other. We're not, being alone is not good for any of us,
Yeah.
but too much alone. Let me say it that way. Yeah.
I live by myself. I'm fine.
Yeah. But you live in New York by yourself,
That's true. Yeah.
yeah.
And I do have friends and I speak to my mother every day. And if she doesn't hear from me, she calls me or texts me, like, where are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going on? It's like, I'm literally in my apartment watching The Office. So,
Totally. There you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
So, where do you kind of hope, like, what do you have any like dream roles or where do you kind of like see the trajectory of your career going and your podcast going?
Um, it's a tough thing because I do everything myself on the podcast,
Mhm.
and it's really tough when you're an actor and
Mhm.
then you start working, to balance both. And I haven't been, the past year I've not done a lot because I've been working.
Well, I
And
will say for me also, like I stupidly decided to do seasons instead of episodes. So like
yeah,
if I could change anything, it would just be like going by episode and not being like season 5, episode
right.
2. Cause but there would be periods of times where I wouldn't like even be doing my podcast
Same.
just because I'm busy with life and work and
And that's okay, and
yeah. But I also
I
don't have people reaching out to me being like, when is your next episode?
well, and that's what was tough for me is people were doing that. And, obviously the goal for me was always acting. And at one
Yeah.
point, there was money offered for it to become this thing. And my father, and probably the most sage advice he'd ever given me, he was like, son, you want to be an actor? And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I never wanted to be a host. He's like,
Mhm.
so if they call tomorrow and Blue Bloods gives you, you're taking that call. And I'm like, yeah, of course. So I never took the money to make it
Yeah.
as big as it could have been, because when I get that call, even for an audition, I'm going,
Yeah.
and now as I started to work, I'm not constantly working in the way I'd like to, but I think what I'd like the podcast, and Marin does a good job of this, is I'm doing an episode next week with someone that I worked with, and I kind of like that approach of, like, finally having the dynamic be that we did something together and then talking about it. And I think that's exciting. And I still would love doing it with people that I don't know when I can,
Mm.
but it's very easy to get sucked into this being, you know, the everything of your life. But if you're trying to be an actor,
Yeah.
that should be first. And
Yes.
that's my advice, for directing,
Mhm.
and your audience will understand if they get what your mission statement is about your podcast, because,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, and also I'm writing more now, and it's important that I use that time
Yeah.
to be writing, because it's really hard, as when you're booking, editing, directing, researching all by yourself. There's only so much one human can do on their own.
Yeah. What type of stuff are you writing? Are you doing plays, film, TV, a little bit of this, a little bit of
I
everything?
I have an idea for a play that I will do as a movie one day, and then I
I'm
have
putting it out there. I'm very good at casting and I direct. So
oh, thank you. I'll
you're
keep that in
welcome.
mind.
Please
And
do.
um, so I
I'm
have,
very serious about it. I'm throwing it out there.
yeah, for sure. I have this play that I'm really, that's kind of right now my thing, and then I have two shorts that I really want to do before the end of 2023.
Mhm. So these shorts, would you find the director you would want to perform in it? What would be your of the shorts? Like, how would you want to be involved aside from writing or just writing them?
Oh, I would act in if not both, one of them for
Mhm.
sure, but as well. But right now it's really kind of me playing the line producer in, you know, how much am I going to do the $30,000 version of this, or am I going to do the $5,000 version of this? And writing both scripts, and then really taking an honest look about, okay, which one, and if that means then that not only do one short, then I want to do that one, So it's really me trying to kind of be as objective and financially responsible as possible, while also being as creatively
Yeah.
true to my vision as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you know this already, but there are a lot of shorts that end up becoming feature films.
And that's what I'm thinking about, and I don't want to give it away, but whatever, one of the shorts is a vignette of the play, because
Mhm.
ultimately it will be a movie. And so, and also I think it would help me kind of sell the play a bit, or,
Mhm.
if it becomes a movie first. So it's really just kind of, I guess, how guerrilla filmmaking do I want to go?
Yeah. So do you have any like dream roles that you would love to perform?
Oh man, totally. I mean, I always wanted to play Edgar Allan Poe. That's always been a dream of mine.
Mhm.
He's a Richmond, Virginia, fellow as well. And
Didn't
you
Christian
know,
Bale just do a movie as Edgar Allan Poe?
no, the guy from Harry Potter played Poe, but it was a fictitious Poe. It's not really based on his life.
Which guy from Harry? There's so many of them.
I
Are you
cannot
right?
remember, but he was one of the more niche ones.
Okay.
Not. I could. I don't know. I'm not the biggest Harry Potter guy, but
That's okay.
it's not like Daniel or Rupert or Emma,
Mhm.
But
Yeah. So Edgar
but
Allan
yeah,
Poe.
but
Yeah.
I guess like you asked, what kind of trajectories, like Shea Wiggum's one of my best friends, and there's an actor Paul Sparks and Jason Isaacs and Rufus Sewell. The careers those guys have are always what I've wanted to do.
They just announced the other day that Paul Sparks is coming back to Broadway in a play
Is
called
he?
Ray House, I think. It's a horror show, which I probably won't see because I don't like scary. And it's him, Tatiana Maslany, and Laurie Metcalf. And it's going to be at the
Wow.
Lyceum, directed by Joe Mantello. And
Oh,
it was a
nice.
show in Chicago, and they're bringing it to New York. So, and I
Well, you
think Paul
just made my
Sparks is
day.
You're welcome. I think Paul
Yeah.
Sparks is great. I saw him in At Home at a Zoo,
Yeah.
and he was just so, and because, he usually, like, especially on film, I always feel like he plays the same type of character. So when I saw him in At Home at a Zoo, it was so nice to see him play like such a different part,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I love Paul, Jason, Rufus in there, and I know what you mean about Paul, but like in Boardwalk, he really got to do a
Yeah,
character, and so what those guys do, they're always working,
yeah,
they get on the stage, and that's what I'm trying to do is like be
yeah,
always working in film and TV and get to the stage.
yeah,
Ideally for me, once a year,
yeah.
that's important for me.
Well, it's like I mentioned to somebody in my last podcast, like there was I was watching something with Stephen Pasquale, and he says he does like TV and film to fund his theater habit or his
100%.
theater addiction.
I
So I feel like
can't
that's a lot of actors.
I'll tell you a story. I did do a job.
Mhm,
I don't want to say which, so anyone will figure it out. But I did a job with someone who just finished a Broadway run,
mhm.
and they told me they made more one day on this job than they did the entire Broadway run.
Yeah.
And so it's tough now because unless you're Denzel Washington or Hugh Jackman,
Mhm.
it just doesn't pay like
Yeah.
you know film and TV do. So yeah, he's 100% right.
Yeah. Do you have any top going theater experiences
Tons. Um,
aside from
Yer-
Spring Awakening?
Yerma changed my life at Park Avenue Armory. I
Mhm.
thought that was, I mean, just one of the most spellbounding. It just changed the conception of what I thought theater. I mean, the way the director did it was just to this day. It's like I wish my brain thought that way. I mean, they did it in this like fish tank, and the audience was on both
That
sides.
had Billy Piper in it, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible. That production of Yerma,
She's a great actor too.
yeah, Robert Ike's production of Hamlet, which
Mhm.
we've both seen, and
I've seen clips of it. I haven't sat down to watch the whole thing yet.
Edna Walsh's with Killian Murphy, Grief is the Thing with Feathers. I
Mhm.
thought that was incredible. Um, Rufus Sewell and Rock and Roll, I really loved, and yeah, those are the ones that really come to mind. Obviously, I said, but like the first time I experienced Sleep No More, I thought I had never seen theater done like that. I thought that was really cool. So
Yeah.
anything Punch Drunk does, I try to support. And yeah, I think, I really like theater that fucks shit up. It's funny, true story. I saw Jake Gyllenhaal do Constellations, and it was
Hmm.
incredible. And I was at this place that I go to in the West Village, and I was with a friend, and we were talking, and we were waiting in the elevator. There was a tall guy in front of us, and then we got in the elevator, and it was Jake Gyllenhaal. So it was me, my friend, and Jake. And then like Jake kind of had that moment where obviously he knows that we know who it is,
Hmm.
and so I was like, I didn't want to like name a movie because that would. So I was like,
Yeah.
I told him, I was like, hey man, I saw you in Constellations, and it was amazing. It changed my life. And I could tell he really appreciated that because he was like, no way, I'm actually doing one with Nick Payne again. You should come at the public.
Hmm.
And it was called Seawall of Life. And so I
Yeah.
went and saw that workshop before it went to Broadway. And
Yeah. I
that
never
was
saw it when I was at the public, but I saw it on Broadway. And for me, I actually prefer Jake Gyllenhaal on stage as
he's
opposed.
amazing.
He's incredible on stage.
Yeah.
He's
What I
incredible
mean,
on stage.
I mean, honestly, when I saw his Constellations British accent,
Mhm.
the best American British accent ever,
Yeah.
like I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
He's very good looking, very charming, and a movie star, but he is very much an actor.
Yeah. And I just think he's so fantastic on again, I prefer him to his films are great, but I think he's a better stage actor. Not
I
to
honestly
he's a
think he
bad.
might even agree with that because he loves being there, and, and
Yeah.
and and the thing that I appreciate about Jake is I think the Seawall Life run was 3 months of the public, which for Jake and any agent at CAA, it's
Yeah.
like a long time where their client, and when it went to Broadway, they signed up for like another 7 months. So I mean, Jake took himself off the market for a year, which for someone like him,
Yeah.
that's like a 30-50 million dollar year. So he loves the theater, and
Yeah.
I respect so much his
Yeah.
dedication to it.
Yeah. I also have a lot of respect for Jessica Chastain too as a performer. Because I just remember watching, I wasn't there for it live, but her Inside the Actors Studio and just like the amount of work and research that she does for like all of her characters. And she was talking about her character in Help and the place Sugar Ditch, I think she's from, her character. And she was saying that was like a predominantly like Black neighborhood. And that brought so much to her character because did you see The Help?
I did not know.
Yeah. So if you saw The Help, you would understand what I was talking about because, it takes place in the South during segregation in the 60s. So it's like a big divide between, the Black maids and the predominantly like white, well-to-do women that they work for and the racism there. So I just thought that was really interesting. And, she loves theater. She went to Juilliard and she's such like, feel like she's like an acting nerd too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I just like, I have a lot of respect for her too as a performer.
yeah. I'm gonna see A Doll's House, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how
I
that
I
goes.
hope I get to see it. I hear it's very good. Speaking of acting and Inside the Actor Studio stuff,
Yeah,
you ready for the Inside the Actor Studio questions?
let's do it.
Okay, Ryan, what is your favorite word?
Fuck, probably. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, I'm basic bitch. I know.
That's fine. I'm basic bitch too.
Yeah,
What is your least favorite word?
can't,
A-N-T or
can't.
oh, can't. I thought you said ant. Wow,
No, 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 can't. I hate that
can't.
word.
Got it. What turns you on?
Passion,
What turns you off?
ego,
What is your favorite curse word?
cunt.
What sound or noise do you love?
Um, when my dogs, I pet them and they get really comfortable, they make this breathing, just like cozy sound, and I live for that.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Bubble gum or like the texting on the phone noise. Hate that. Oh God.
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Writing.
What profession would you not like to attempt?
Politics.
So I don't know how James Lipton phrased this for people who don't believe in God. So I'm just going to ask the question and
Yeah.
then we'll figure it out. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You fucking did it, bro.
And as Mr. Lipton would say, here are your students. I like how my voice got low. It's like inside the actor studio. I will say that is like the quickest actor studio questionnaire I did because every time there's always like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing because I find it interesting. People like, oh, they take their time with the answer.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I knew what's my answer to this, and then they'll explain something. And that was like the quickest one. And again, I don't mind that they do that, but it was very interesting how quick it was.
Oh, I hope people like him.
Yeah.
Sorry if it
Well,
yeah.
no, when you said your favorite word was fuck, I'm like, well, there's his favorite curse word, but I was
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong. It's all good.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you would like to add before we end this fabulous podcast episode we've been doing? Do you have any questions?
I'd love to shout you out,
Anything?
for the work that you're doing, and I hope that you should be really proud of this journey you're embarking on, and don't be too obsessed with who it is. I think
I'm not that obsessed with it.
what you're doing is great, and you should be so proud of yourself. And I
I'm gonna
think this
pat myself on the back.
I think let this thing surprise you where it takes you, and enjoy the journey, and try
Yeah.
not to become jaded by the whole politics of who comes on and who doesn't, because it is so easy to let that
Mhm.
determine your mental health. And as someone who did that,
Yeah.
don't focus on the journey.
I think there are pockets of moments where it's like,
Yeah,
why? But and I like my thing now is like the worst they can say is no, or like not
yeah,
respond to you, or just no.
yeah,
And then you just move on. And it wasn't meant to be. And if it was meant to be, they would come on. And I've had many people on that I've been like, I can't believe they said yes to doing this
yeah.
podcast. And the other people who are just like, abso-fucking-lutely, I'll do it. It's like, great, let's
Yeah.
meet and figure it out. So it's all
Yeah.
good. And I hope whomever does come on, I hope you had a good time and you had fun.
Great time.
Good.
Great
I hope you're
time.
not just saying that. I'm just joking.
No, yeah.
I do want to ask though, I always ask my last question is this: why do you think theater is important?
I think theater is the most important tradition we have in storytelling, and it is the most authentic thing since, civilized. I mean, maybe not even civilized, primal, there's paintings on cave walls, and I think it is the most i- imperative of relaying information and engaging in what it means to be human and examining it and understanding it and giving a place for people to come together and gather and experience something together. I think it is the most sacred thing that we have, and it needs to be protected. And it needs to be protected both from capitalism, and it needs to be protected from you know PC, being politically correct, because I don't think life's not politically correct. Children get cancer all the time. I think
Mhm.
it's important that people are able to tell their visions, whether you agree or not with them. Obviously, like Kanye West of the world is like, never give that guy a theater, but you know what I mean? I think, yeah, I think theater has the ability to be more powerful than film because it doesn't happen as often as it does in film. But when it does, when theater works, it's alive, and it's a moment that'll never happen again. But for that moment, for those 2 hours that you're alive together in the room, and when you experience one of those shows that's so good, it's kinetic, man. It hits you in the body, and it recharges your soul, and there's something primal that comes to life, and I really hope that everyone, you take risks, because obviously, I by taking risks, I mean, seeing stuff that's not good, because that happens to get to the good stuff, and be bold, and don't always go with the slam dunk shows, because sometimes those ones that are smaller, they're fighting harder than, the people that are making the $20 million a week paycheck.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You can stay after I stop recording.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No, thank you so much. I'm on FBI. I don't know when this will air, so check that out. I
And
got
your
a movie.
podcast?
Yeah,
Yeah.
An Actor Despairs.
Mhm.
I'm doing some episodes soon. So thank you so much. And
Yeah.
this
You
is,
were, I interrupted. You said a movie you have that you did?
yeah, a movie. Can't talk much about it, but there should be an announcement on it soon.
That's great. Well, thank you
Yeah,
so much for coming on and thank you for those listening. I always love how I look at my mic like it's a person who's listening to my podcast.
it's all good. So
Like,
much love,
hey,
and everyone listening, keep going, don't
yes.
stop.
And keep listening to more episodes and An Actor Despairs. And you can also watch it on YouTube.
Yes, yes. Please do. That's where I prefer people watch.
You don't want them to hear, you just want a visual.
I think you missed out on so many different,
Mm.
visual cues that really indicate things. But, I get it if you're on the go, as long as you're tuning in.
Maybe they watch it some other time. Anyway, all right. Thank you for coming on. Bye,
All right.
everyone.